Top of the morning, everybody. Welcome to an at-home edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lancia in my lovely living room decorated by my lovely wife. Coming up in the show, 55 minutes of, NHL picks. We're going to have an AL Central preview. We got best bets for some of the biggest, beefiest names at Bay Hill. Michael Lombardi is going to stop by. He's going to talk about what he thinks the Bears will do with the number one overall pick and why the pitch clock ranks up there with like Pop-Tarts as the greatest human inventions ever. But first, back from his trip from Seattle, scouting future locations for the Supersonics, we got DraftKings contributor Jeff Pratt on the horn with us, baby. Welcome home. I have missed you, my sweet chinchilla. How you been?
I've been great, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the intro. I missed you too.
All right, great. Well, let's preview the 10-game NBA slate tonight, my dude, since you are here. One that includes the Lakers, right? One that includes the Lakers without LeBron James. So dealing with a foot injury that could cost him significant time here, Jeff. And the Lakers have just 21 games left in the regular season. How the hell are they going to make the playoffs now?
I think there's a chance they can still make the play-in because they're only a half game out of the 11 seed. They're only 2.5 games out of the 6 seed right now. That being said, the margin of error has been cut to absolutely zero. A lot of things have to happen for this to go right. Anthony Davis has to A, stay healthy, and B, be the best version of himself, which is a top 6 or 7 player in this league. D'Angelo Russell has to get healthy and become capable of handling the workload as a number 2 option. Role players like Dennis Schroeder, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt will all have to step up. I just listed off a long list of things that have to happen, and virtually all of them have to go right for LA to even make the play-in because they can't afford to drop many games moving forward. That being said, one thing that is working in their favor is they have the 5th easiest remaining strength of schedule. So if they take care of the games against the weaker opponents and they pick up some wins against higher seeds, it's definitely doable.
I mean, dude, these next 5 games are crucial. So what? Tonight against the Grizzlies, you got sandwiched between contests against current playing teams with Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Golden State. And now all of a sudden, LeBron James is in danger of missing this playoff for consecutive years for the first time since his first 2 years in the NBA, man. Dude, the Lakers suck without him. They're 36-62 overall when he is out.
They're not great. They're not great without him. That being said, they did pick up a lot of depth at the trade deadline, and they've been a much better team since then. So I'll give them a little bit of credit there. This is a completely different team than they were constructed prior to the trade deadline. So we'll give them the very slight benefit of the doubt here.
Okay. I trust you, dude. I trust you.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of DFS tonight, again, nice 10-game slate around the association. Who do you want to pay up for tonight?
Yeah, I really don't want anything to do with either of the 2 most expensive options on tonight's slate, Giannis or Luka. You just can't trust Giannis until we see a fully healthy game from him in which he produces at an elite level. And then Luka simply isn't worth a price tag anymore because of his dip in usage since Kyrie Irving arrived in Dallas. So that leaves us with 2 other guys over 11K. And I like both of them. One of them is Nikola Jokic. He continues to produce at a ridiculously high level, scored 70 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. The Nuggets are also 23-0 when he has recorded a triple double, which is unbelievable for so many reasons. And then the other guy is Damian Lillard. And I don't even have to really explain why he's a great DFS option. If you've been watching the Trailblazers play lately, if you looked up the definition of a flamethrower in the dictionary, you probably just see his face pictured right there after this ridiculous scoring stretch. On top of that, he's playing Golden State tonight. The Warriors are just atrocious defensively against guards. I think Jokic and Lillard are equally appealing for different reasons, so I just roll with either one of them tonight.
I was so disappointed the other night when Lillard didn't end with 100 points in that game. He had 41 at halftime, which is what Wilt had at halftime of his 100-point game. I'm like, hey, listen, man, there's a chance here. There's a chance.
Yeah, I was in Seattle on vacation, as you mentioned, Emerson. You mentioned a couple of times now, and I just checked the stats literally at halftime randomly. I wasn't prompted to do that whatsoever, and I almost spit out my water because I saw he had 41 points, and then unfortunately he just started chucking in the second half, as is what usually happens when these guys have big first halves, and they finished with not the best efficiency.
I'm glad that you were drinking water and hydrating. You young kids tend to forget to do that
Yes,
these
of
days.
course. Always.
Okay, you guys also tend to forget how to save money. So save us some right now with a solid value play tonight on this slate.
I'm great at saving money, Emerson. And I think I've got a great pick here under 5K. I'm rolling with Keegan Murray at 4,400. He's really picked up his level of play lately, and it's given the Kings a great boost. He's racked up 38 and 28 fantasy points, respectively, over his last two contests. And probably the most impressive thing about his game is his ability to score with such a limited usage rate. You know, when you play with guys like De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, you aren't going to handle the ball a lot. So you have to make the most of your touches. And that is exactly what he's done, as demonstrated specifically by his 3-point shooting, which is sitting at 41%. Extremely impressive for a rookie. I can absolutely see him filling in as the Harrison Barnes role, what he's played in Sacramento over the past few years. You know, a guy who will give you 16 to 18 points per night on efficient shooting and a solid rebounding presence. Is just looking like a slam dunk pick for the Kings right now. He gets the Thunder tonight. They rank 27th in fantasy points allowed to wing. So this is a good spot for him to keep the momentum rolling. It is worth noting De'Aaron Fox is questionable tonight. If he sits, Murray could see an even more significant role.
All right, dude, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here. Which team do you like against the spread? 3 of the 10 here have a spread of at least 9 points. Spurs, Jazz, Pacers, Mavs, and as we've mentioned already, Lakers, Grizz.
You know, Emerson, I never thought we'd talk about the Lakers so much during a segment, but here we are. And I never thought I'd be so confident in their ability to cover, even without LeBron James, especially against a good team like the Memphis Grizzlies. But here we are. They're getting 9 points tonight in Memphis. And honestly, I wouldn't be that shocked if they win this game outright, even with LeBron out due to an ankle injury, just because of how well their depth is playing right now. You know, about a week ago, LeBron said that after the All-Star break would be the most important stretch of his career, which for one is just blatantly false. But the Lakers are playing like they've bought into that and they believe it. Like, as I mentioned earlier, this is a completely different team compared to what we saw from them prior to the trade deadline. They're much deeper. The shooting has drastically improved. And most importantly, they're playing with a ton of confidence. You know, they're 4-1 against the spread over their last 5 games. Meanwhile, the Grizzlies have been really underperforming in that regard, as they're just 3-6 ATS over their last 9. Another interesting note is the Lakers are actually one of the best road teams in the West this year, with a 14-18 away record. And at first glance, that doesn't sound like much, but only 2 teams in the Western Conference are currently above 500 on the road. So I expect LA to stay hot and keep this relatively close.
All right, because the Grizzlies are a tough out on their own court, dude. They have a 25-5 straight up mark, 18-11-1 ATS record as hosts there. But hey, again, I trust you. I listen to your words, Mr. Pratt. Take me to a game total. Which game total you like? And you need to go over or under this thing.
Yeah, there aren't a ton of inflated game totals on this slate. And that's typically my strategy, targeting one of those matchups and taking the under. So when in doubt, if you have to pivot, just take the over in a Sacramento Kings game. Now, this is a team that scored 176 points in a contest just 4 days ago. They've gone over in 7 of their last 9 games. One of those was a push. And this total isn't nearly as high as I was expecting. It's 236 right now. And the logic behind it only sitting in the 230s is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out tonight. But the Thunder have still scored 115 points in back-to-back games without him. They're capable of racking up points with him out of the lineup. And if they get to 115 again, the Kings should have no problem handling the rest of the scoring. Now, if De'Aaron Fox is out tonight, as I mentioned earlier, then it gets a little dicey. We might be looking at a low-scoring affair because we've been missing both point guards who are responsible for pushing the pace for their teams. But if De'Aaron Fox plays, I like the over here.
Okay, so outside of like LeBron James here, other injuries we should be keeping an eye on and how it could impact like player props tonight or just games in general.
You know, Emerson, You actually just completely cut out of my ears. So
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. That's good. We're going to do it again in 3, 2, 1. So
I see we're talking about injuries.
Yeah. So outside of like LeBron James, we've already hit on that injury a ton already. What other injuries are out there right now that we need to be keeping an eye on, either for tonight's slate or for player props, and could impact any of the games?
Yeah, looking across the league, there are a few other big names besides LeBron who are questionable or out. One of them, I've mentioned him a couple times already, De'Aaron Fox. One may assume that if he sits, Domantas Sabonis would then see an expanded offensive role, but he actually averages fewer points per game with Fox out of the lineup than he does when he's in the lineup, because Sabonis then has to take over more of a role as a playmaker. So I would be hesitant to jump on what would likely be an inflated points prop there, but I would be interested to see what the assist line jumps to for him. And then quickly, Jamal Murray is questionable with back pain. If he's out, it only boosts the already solid chances of Nikola Jokic recording a triple-double. We could even see the odds of that happening shift from plus to even money, which is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. So guys dealing with injuries, that's something that Kevin Durant has been dealing with even since he's been shipped off to the Suns, which he's expected to make his Phoenix debut tomorrow, dude. Tomorrow against Charlotte. What are your expectations for this dude? He's talked about there is pressure on him. Critics say there is pressure on Kevin Durant and the Suns to win a title this year.
There's a lot of pressure, and I expect Kevin Durant to look like Kevin Durant in his first game with the Phoenix Suns. He probably won't play a ton of minutes, especially if this is a blowout, because Charlotte's not a very good basketball team, although they have won 5 straight games. So maybe it will be a bit closer than we think. But KD's the type of player who can fit into almost any system almost effortlessly because of his efficiency and general basketball IQ. We saw from his time in Golden State that he doesn't need a ridiculously high usage rate to still produce at an elite level. And that's a good thing for the Suns, because with Chris Paul and Devin Booker in the lineup, he's not going to see a 35% usage rate consistently for them. Meanwhile, Charlotte is the perfect matchup for the Suns to ease him into their system. They rank top 4 in pace. They allow the 3rd most points per game. So even if he only does play 18 to 25 minutes, or maybe even fewer, I wouldn't be shocked to see him finish with a stat line of 25, 4-4, or something like that.
Yeah, what's nice is I've listened to a lot of the analysts out there, including guys like JJ Redick, good friend of DraftKings, who says like he's one of those dudes, Kevin Durant, a player you can put him on any team, and like a coach isn't going to really have to like change up his entire game plan or strategy when you kind of plug and play him. He's just that good and kind of just goes with the flow.
It's ridiculous how easy he fits into pretty much any team in the NBA, considering how much of a superstar he is.
All right, dude. Well, the only team that has better championship odds, shorter championship odds than the Suns are your Celtics, which congratulations on Jason Tatum being ejected last night for the first time, I believe, in his career. Young Jeffrey, it's great to have you back, homie. We will talk to you later this week. We got an AL Central preview to dive into with Steve Buchanan coming up. And yes, we'll get his thoughts on the greatest invention in sports history, the pitch clock, a topic of conversation on yesterday's Gojo podcast with Mike Jr. and his dad.
Dad, this seems like one of the things that's going to take some time to get used to, which is why it's so great that Major League Baseball is getting all these headlines, for the most part, the initial run at them out of the way now in spring training when the games don't matter.
I have zero worry about this. So the 3 big things that they changed is the pitch clock, no more shifting, and the larger bases, right? I think it's actually 4.5 inches less distance, I think, between bases now for if you're stealing a base or trying to stretch a single into or whatever, because the bases are bigger. So those were the changes that we're talking about. This pitch clock, Mike, I don't worry about it one bit. How many games did we go to when we were living in Connecticut over at Duncan Field, right? The minor league game over there.
Goats, yeah.
They had a pitch clock going there. Do you know what athletes do? They adapt. I don't care what sport it is. Pick something on the offensive line. I pick something on the defensive line that they changed the rule about. Well, they changed rules about how you can hit for DBs in the NFL.
Right.
And it takes a little while because the way you do it is so ingrained, but then you have to change. And you know what you do? You adjust. players adjust. Some do it quicker than others, but that's what you have to do. So by the time we get to the regular season, maybe even a little bit into the regular season, they'll adjust. They'll adjust their stances. And look at the biggest difference. You had games in the 3-hour area. The game you're mentioning in the other games, 2 hours and 29 minutes, 2 hours and 32 minutes, 2 hours and 20-some minutes. I mean, that's fantastic because let's be honest. Now, again, I'm sure some of the traditionalists hate it, just like in a lot of sports when you change a rule, they hate it. And they were like, it's supposed to be baseball. There's not supposed to be a clock in baseball, a game clock, let alone a pitch clock. And there isn't a game clock, as we know, but the game moves along. What's the fallout from it? Pitchers have to do it a little quicker. Batters have to do it a little quicker. Pitchers may get their stamina tested a little more because they have to be a little quicker. But this is all stuff that they'll adjust to. It'll feel weird at first, but then they'll adjust to it. You know why? Because they have to, because it's the new rule. It's not going to go backwards, especially when Major League Baseball sees games ending in 2.5 hours as opposed to 3 or over 3 hours. That's huge. We know that's huge. For as much as you sit around and you go, my God, it takes forever in between pitch and all that. So I love it. And I think just like in the minor league, the games that we'd go watch, they all have adapted to it already. That pitch clock has been around for a couple of years, if I'm correct, in minor league baseball, right?
Yeah, they've been testing it out in the minors for a while. They will adjust, absolutely. And most times in early season baseball, it usually favors pitchers anyway. And for some guys, I saw Max Scherzer giving people absolute hell. Like, he's a guy that is going to walk into this and absolutely be in an advantage because of the way he pitches. For some guys, it's going to be a bigger adjustment. But you're right. They will make that switch. If NFL players can figure out which part on the human torso to hit while launching each other full speed at each other across the field, I'm not going to have a lot of sympathy for baseball players here, even if this is technically one of the most difficult things to do in hitting a baseball. The thing with the rules is I think it's less about the total time of the game. Like, obviously, that's a big national thing for us, but I think we kind of get some of these things wrong. The same thing's going on with college football right now. So college football is proposing a number of rule changes about the pace of play there, eliminating the stopping of the clock after first downs, basically until after first downs, like the NFL does. Trying to change some other rules like that with, going out of bounds and when that stops the clock, trying to make it a little bit more similar to the NFL. Right. But as people have pointed out, college football games are largely long because there's a shit ton of commercials. Right. And most college football fans are saying, we don't necessarily need shorter games. We want more of the action. And I think with all of these changes to rules for Major League Baseball, there is potential to do that, right? Because you've banned the shifts, more balls get put in play. Because you've got larger bases, maybe you've incentivized more steals and more action going on within the body of a play here. The pitch clock, at some point, like you said, we'll see if the advantage tilts in favor more of hitters or of pitchers, as that's a very cerebral matchup. But either way, it all works to try and just get more action into the sport where it felt like between every pitch, you could sit back, check your phone, do any number of other things.
All right, friendly reminder, check out the Gojo Show every weekday to hear former Notre Dame teammates Mike Golick Jr. and Brandon Newman talk sports and stuff, although, Dad was filling in because Brandon was marrying a couple in Mexico and where he decided to eat Subway instead of tacos. Grab it wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, including Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, and more. Steve Buchanan, we heard his reaction there. You have your own podcast as well with Julian Edlow, Unreasonable Odds. So anything you'd like to tease coming up this week?
I'm not on it because I don't watch college basketball or anything like that. So it's going to be Julian, great, doing a lot of the work, which he definitely needs to do. So yeah, whatever's Julian doing, I'm sure it's going to be great.
All right, well, this is it's a perfect segue to take us into our AL Central preview here. Despite some early confusion, though, the pitch clock, dude, the pitch clock is doing its job. I absolutely love this thing. What are your thoughts about it after a few games here in the spring training?
One of my favorite movies is The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I haven't seen
it. It's about 3 hours long.
Yeah, that's
now.
Right.
I can watch that movie every once in a while. I don't want to watch that movie every single night. And that's basically what a baseball game was. It was 3 hours plus. Now we're getting like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I saw 2 hours and 7 minutes the other day with, I think it was like during the Royals game. Oh, that's beautiful. The pitch clock is doing what exactly it needs to do in a generation where attention spans are like next to nothing. Like I just lost my attention there. This is perfect for the game of baseball. It's going to be, take a little bit of time for people to get adjusted. We've already seen that in some of these spring training games, but this is the perfect time to implement that, not in the middle of the season or something like that. This is doing its job. It's love to see it. And I'm very happy that this has been implemented.
Right? Like, sure, I think it's going to result in some weird moments like we've seen already,
Sure.
like a called strike 3 with the bases loaded, or maybe a pitcher forgets to look at the clock, which I don't know how you miss that thing. It's ginormous. And even Jared Robbins was tweeting the other day, and I totally agree with him. It like gives me anxiety watching that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, throw it.
Right.
But anywho, how it plays in the regular season remains to be seen. Well, hopefully it has the same impact it's having on spring training games right now. So speaking of Jared, we did preview the AL West last week. So everyone go check that out on our DraftKings YouTube page right now. But Steve, as we dive into the Central here, defying all expectations last year, the Guardians won their first division title, I think, since 2018. They added a nice little postseason run in there too. Some say it's more because of their awful, divisional counterparts, but the front office still put together a pretty solid roster from top to bottom. So how do you like him here at plus 135 to do it again?
Yeah, look, a lot of things need to kind of take place here with the Guardians to do that again. But when you're looking at the other teams in this division, I really kind of like the White Sox here at plus 240. And I feel like maybe it's a fool's bet because we've had this so many times where, we like the White Sox and then they just can't end up doing it. They can't go the whole marathon of the season and make it to the finish line there. Yes, they did lose one of their best power bats on their team with Jose Abreu. But when they're healthy, and that's a big if, you got Eloy Jimenez, you got Luis Robert, all can produce some massive power numbers. Like look at Eloy Jimenez in 2019 when he played over 100 games, 31 home runs, 79 RBIs. That was a huge season for him. Luis Robert in about a season and a half since 2020, 36 home runs, 128 RBI, 26 stolen bases. This thing with the Guardians is that this offense is really based around Jose Ramirez. And while that's not a bad thing, if something happens to him, that lineup all of a sudden looks really, really thin. The Twins made some good moves on offense. Their pitching still leaves a lot to left to be desired. So I think the White Sox, a lot of ifs there, but I think that's going to be the team to beat in this division.
Yeah, and with Ramirez too, I think people forget that last year he played through a thumb injury that cut into his second half production, was having a pretty damn good year there. And speaking of that young man, he finished 4th at MVP voting last year. I think he's finished inside the top 10 in AL MVP voting in 5 of the past 6 years here. So he sits atop of the list at plus 1,500 of several big names from the division with decent odds here, Bukes. Buxton's in there. Carlos Correa, after that wacky ass off season, just back with the Twins at plus 3,500. Could you see the MVP coming out of this division?
It's really tough because when you're looking at this whole list, the top 10 players with the best odds, only one of them is from the AL Central, and that's Jose Ramirez at 15-1. I have this yearly ritual that I do, and I'm not going to stop it this year. But whenever Byron Buxton is sitting there, and especially at 30-1, got to put a little sprinkle on that one there. I mean, it's really hard not to, but here's the thing that's amazing. Last season, this man missed 70 games last year, still hit 28 home runs with 51 RBI and 61 runs scored. That is absolutely absurd for the amount of production that he had despite missing 70 games. If you look at the whole MLB landscape from last year, only 2 players hit at least 20 home runs with less than 100 games played. Byron Buxton was one of them. William Contreras from the Braves was the other one, having 20 home runs through 97 games. If Buxton can somehow stay healthy, he could be one of the biggest steals on the board at MVP at 30-1 odds as it sits right now. But the injury concern is a legitimate thing because he really struggles to stay on the field for a prolonged amount of time. But if that is this year, and we're going to say this next year and the year after and the year after, but that is the guy because his talent is absurd. And the number you're getting him at, especially when you consider all the production he had last year, it's a potential steal. But that being said, the injuries always seem to pop up every single year.
For sure. Let's go to the mound, because what do you think it'll take for the Cy Young winner to come out of this division? I believe Chicago's Dylan Cease finished second last year. That was to Justin Verlander. I mean, this year, he's got the fourth best odds at plus 900. That's right. And right behind him is Shane Bieber at plus 950. So what do you think?
Yeah, quite frankly, if Justin Verlander didn't go on that run in the second half of the year, this was Dylan Cease's award to lose. I mean, you have two legitimate Cy Young candidates entering the AL this year, and that's the problem too with Jacob deGrom, Carlos Rodon, after making a brief spot in the National League with the Giants last year. But don't forget, there was a run for Dylan Cease last year where he had 14 straight starts, allowing no more than an earned run. He gave up 7 runs to the Boston Red Sox and then went 14 straight with either no runs allowed or 1 run allowed. I mean, you can't, think that he could have that type of run again this year, but nonetheless, he has that capability to go on one of those types of runs. He's very good at limiting hard contact. He has elite strikeout upside, which is something that obviously plays into the factor of going into the Cy Young. There's just so many good pitchers in the American League, and that's really the tough part here. But at 9-1 for Dylan Cease to start the year, I do like that number there. I don't mind taking him there because he is going to be in the conversation all throughout the season. So coming out of the Central here, Shane Bieber, nice name. Strikeout numbers to continue to go down. Not a bad thing because he's getting outs, but the strikeout numbers are no longer elite for Bieber. That's where I think Dylan Cease has the advantage from him for this award.
I mean, if his numbers are any better than what they were last year, you've already spit off how impressive they are. Like, he's as closest to a lock to win the Cy Young as you're going to get in 2023.
No doubt.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, with the injury concerns with DeGrom too, is the favorite, is something to really consider. Yep.
All right, so win total, team's win total here. Your favorite from this division, going even either over or under. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, you're getting even odds for the White Sox to go over 83.5. I was just talking about this team earlier in the segment here, but we're talking about a 3-game difference to go over their total from last season to hit the over on this one here. Like I mentioned, they've made some nice moves over this offseason here. They got a really good bullpen in the back. Obviously, their closer, Liam Hendricks, is going to be out as he's dealing with some cancer issues right now. But nonetheless, that bullpen is set to really kind of take that role from him, whether it's Graveman or wherever, to close out games. I love their rotation. I love their offense here. And with the balanced schedule too, that could play in the White Sox advantage because every team is going to play every team this year. That could be, a good opportunity to beat up on some of these other teams that they may not see, like the Washington Nationals or whatever, or teams like that. But I think just to be over 500, just barely over 500, I think that's something that this team can absolutely do. So I like the White Sox to go over 83.5 wins this season.
That's right. They got your dude Benny Biceps out there now.
That's right, too. Good contact hitter. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Tony La Russa is gone, which I know many people will feel is
thank God.
Addition by subtraction.
Oh, get that guy out of here. Never bring him back. That guy stinks.
With the biggest disappointment in baseball last season. No doubt about it, man. The White Sox. Strictly from a fantasy perspective here, Steve, can you run through your top 5 fantasy players for me, please, in this division?
Yeah, I think the Central is actually a little bit tough. This might be one of the weaker divisions when you're talking about overall players, but you think about some of the top 5 guys here. Jose Ramirez is, of course, going to take the number 1 spot here, followed by the second year of Bobby Witt Jr., just an elite combination of speed, power, great fielder, all things that he can do. You got Shane Bieber on there too as well. I do like him a little bit more than Dylan Cease because while Dylan Cease will have those strikeout numbers, Shane Bieber from a fantasy perspective was one of the more better consistent guys that you could rely on. Luis Robert, if he can stay healthy, I mentioned earlier the big power numbers that he can put up, and then we'll wrap it up here with Dylan Cease with those elite strikeout numbers. I think those are the top 5 guys in the division for this year.
All right, cool. We'll wrap it up with this quickly. A sleeper in this division, fantasy player should be keeping an eye on.
Back to the Guardians. Andres Jimenez has been such an under-the-radar guy. This is someone who had 17 home runs, 69 RBI, and 20 stolen bases last year. His wins above replacement for all eligible second basemen was 6.1. That was the second best in the league, trailing only Jose Altuve. I couldn't tell you how many people have even heard of Andres Jimenez. And again, with the new bigger bases, I think that's going to influence teams to run more. Jimenez and Ramirez were tied for the second most stolen bases on the Guardians last year with 20. Put some more numbers on that with those bigger bases. Jimenez in the AL Central, that is your sleeper player for this upcoming season.
All right, Steve Buchanan, farewell. Tell your dogs Lola and Lolo we said hello. We love them. We're bringing you a DFS preview of tonight's 10-game NHL slate coming up right after Michael Lombardi breaks down what he thinks the Bears will do with the number 1 overall pick on this week's edition of the GM Shuffle podcast presented by DraftKings.
All right, let's listen.
Until Bryce Young gets measured, until they throw, until everybody has all the data, nobody's going to sit there and say, wow, I got to trade up to get that guy. I think on the other side, I think the Bears are sitting there saying, which way do we go? Do we continue down this Fields road? I wrote about this extensively today and I tried to use some logic to it to why it may not work and why you may have to make the change, and the sooner the better. I think the one thing in team building that really comes out, most bad decisions in life, whether it was, it usually comes down to too late. Too late to recognize the problem, too late to react. And if that's what the Bears are going to do, they're going to be too late in this thing if they don't. Now, in fairness to the Bears, you could make the argument that maybe there isn't anybody in this draft that's better than what we have with Fields or significantly better. You could maybe make that argument. I think if Caleb Williams was coming out, that would not be the case. I think he would be the first pick, and they would pick him.
So I think most people, when they see this report, they think that, okay, we're clearly hearing two sides, because last week we saw the side of, hey, the Bears could be open to trading Justin Fields. That seemed to be the kind of dominant conversation. And now we're seeing the Bears are looking to shop this pick. And clearly this was put out there by Ryan Poles. It doesn't take any sort of private investigator to figure that one out. You just read the article there and you can see that, okay, the Bears want this information to be out there so they can drum up the interest like you talked about here. So is this just Poles just kind of evaluating everything that's out there, or do you think that they're actually leaning towards Fields and would trade that number 1 overall pick for one of these quarterbacks once we get through this scouting combine over the next 10 days?
I think that what I've been told by people in the league reliably, that for them to get away from Fields, they don't want to look bad. Like they don't want to sell Fields off for a 4, right? He's got 2 more years of a really cheap contract, and then he goes. And he's got skill. There's teams that could want him. There's no doubt. Can he throw the football? Read the article. He doesn't. Here's the most amazing thing about when you research Fields. And I know you're going to defend him, so put your barrister cap on here. We should almost give you, in England where they give you those white robes, that white hat, the funny hairdo. We should give you that to put that on you when you defend Fields. You come in with that, and you got the whole jacket. So the Bears are tied with the Indianapolis Colts for the largest point differential in the league, minus 8.1. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the Indianapolis Colts average 35.5 passes per game. Common for a team that's behind all the time. Common for a team that doesn't win games. Common for a team that's losing. You have to throw the ball to try to get back into the game, right? So that makes sense. The Bears, on the other hand, average 22 passes per game. Why? Because they really, even when they're behind, they don't want to throw it. Even when they're behind, they don't want to keep throwing it. Like, they know the more they throw it. Now, granted, they got sacked 55 times. I understand that. But the more they get behind, they still don't want to throw it. So that tells you a really clear story. They led the league in the least amount of incomplete passes this year, 9 per game. Sounds like a great stat, right? Yeah, but when you peel back the layers, they're not throwing it a lot. And a lot of the throws are easier throws. They can't throw it. They can't make the throws. So even when they're behind, they don't even try to throw it. So to me, that's where they have to make the decision. And again, I'll say this. I haven't studied these guys. I will. But I don't know if there's a significant – if Caleb Williams was out in this draft, I would say to you there's probably a good chance the Bears would trade Fields to do it. I don't know if they feel that way about Bryce Young. Somebody said today he's going to be 198 pounds. That's a hell of a weight program. He's gained weight. Going to be under 6 feet. We'll see.
All right, folks, we're getting close to the NHL trade deadline. I believe 3 o'clock Eastern time on Friday, which is March 3rd. So 10-game slate tonight. Got to be aware of late-minute scratches 4 teams on back-to-backs: Boston, Detroit, Ottawa, Chicago. 3 incredible analysts here to help you break it down from a DFS perspective. RotoWire's AJ Schultz, Paul Bruno, along with NHL.com's Anna Dua. Ladies first, your favorite center on the slate tonight.
I'm taking a look at Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. He's on a 4-game point streak at the moment. Oh my goodness, my voice. With 3 goals, 2 assists in the span. He has 21 points in his past 17 games. Bo Horvat's really turned this team around, especially on the power play. Since he joined the Islanders, they're a top 10 team in the NHL on the man advantage, something they struggled with before Horvat. Nelson, obviously on that top power play unit for the New York Islanders, so I'm taking a look at him specifically on the man advantage.
Okay, Paul, who do you want at the dot?
Well, Tim Stützle and company put a beating on the Red Wings, and I think it could be a double feature tonight. And so I'll wash, rinse, repeat, and plug him in for $6,900 there. Tage Thompson's on a real heater all year long. It's been the same story. One of the leading goal scorers in the NHL. He has a real good chance to fatten up those stats. You'll pay up a little bit to get him, though, at $8,300 against Columbus. And then finally, Braden Point in a game that the Bolts need to get against their cross-state rivals from Miami area. $7,100 the price tag there for Tampa's premier center.
All righty, AJ, talk to me.
Well, for me, I'm going to go to my Penguins and look at Evgeny Malkin here, who's been on an absolute tear. 3 straight multi-point games, racking up a combined 15 points in his last 11 contests. He has been completely boom or bust lately. It's either multi-point games or no points over that stretch. At 6,100, he's significantly discounted compared to the top of the board. I think should offer a pretty good value tonight.
All right, Sobel, I see you in here. We're still in our hockey segment, so I need you to hang up and call back in like 2 minutes. Love you, buddy. All right, on the wing. Who do we want tonight, Paul?
We're going to go with Kirill Kaprizov. If you saw the last game he played in, you would say this is a no-brainer. He scored a hat trick for them, looked dynamic all night long. He's been doing that a lot, though, in the last month, particularly. $8,100 for the premier winger in my list tonight against the New York Islanders, a team that is going to have trouble containing him. Then I like Tyler Toffoli. He's been on a pretty nice streak, playing top-line minutes for Calgary. They catch the Bruins on the second of back-to-backs, and he costs $6,200 there. And then finally, Alex Killorn, underrated by many, but not me. He's a second liner for Tampa. Plays also on the second power play, and he costs only $4,100 against Florida tonight.
Okay, AJ, how much money are you going to spend at the wing here, dude? Because you know a lot of these big hitters are on the second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, again, I'm going to go a little further down in the price range. Look at Clayton Keller at 6,600 here. Another player who's been red hot of late, 15 points in his last 9 contests. That includes 4 power play points, 25 shots on goal. And he's going up against a Blackhawks team who is in full fire sale mode right now. Jake McCabe is gone, which is going to hurt their blue line. Even the departure of, Jack Johnson, the much maligned Jack Johnson, will weaken this defensive unit. Not to mention, you're not going to see Patrick Kane in the lineup as he awaits his trade to New York. And the departure of Sam Lafferty. Everybody is gone from this Blackhawks team. So I think you can use some Coyotes tonight, and Clayton Keller is the main one for me.
All right, Dua, have at it.
Well, if you want the benefits of Tage Thompson with just a little bit of a price cut, I'm taking a look at Jeff Skinner. He's on a 6-game point streak himself right now with 9 points in that span. Obviously playing on that top line with Tage Thompson. I think the Sabres have to be the best team to stack tonight. They're playing at home against the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are averaging, and the Sabres are averaging the 2nd most goals per game in the NHL right now. The Columbus is allowing the 3rd most goals per game in the NHL. So anyone on the Sabres is a pretty good pick, but I really like Jeff Skinner on that top line.
All right, back in the blue line, AJ. Who sits atop your defenseman rankings?
Well, just this morning, the Bolts shuffled around their power play with Mikhail Sergachev joining the top unit here alongside Kucherov and Stamkos. So I think he's worth a look at just 5,700 tonight, especially when you compare him to Hedman, who comes in at 6,900. Sergachev, for his part, 6 points in his last 10, averaging 2 shots per game over that stretch. So a really good option to get value out of that Bolts number 1 unit.
All right, Anna.
I'm going with Hampus Lindholm of the Boston Bruins. I know the Bruins are on the second leg of a back-to-back, but he has 3 points in his past 3 games, has 6 shots on goal across his past 2. There's really no stop in Boston right now. They're on a tear. They're rocking and rolling. They're trying to beat that win record before this season is over. So I'm taking a look at Lindholm to get on the board tonight.
All right, Paul, your defenseman du jour.
Well, I'm looking for Detroit to put up more of a fight than they did last night, and so that Moritz Seider is central to that theme against Ottawa. I think this can be a very high-scoring game, and Seider will man the power play for the Wings, and that's good value at $5,500 for me. Then I like Vince Dunn for Seattle at only $4,400. This is their power play quarterback against St. Louis, his former club, another club that's been stripped down before the trade deadline. So I'll take him. And then finally, Jared Spurgeon is a third consideration at $5,000. Guy's got a great shot from the point, featured on the power play against the Islanders, and that's good for $5,000 tonight.
All right, Anna, help our viewers save some money now. Give me your value play. Let's go down the board.
I'm going all the way down at the bottom, and I'm taking a look at Evgeny Svechnikov. Talking about the other Svechnikov today, he's at 2,500 playing against Montreal. He has points in 3 of his past 4 games with 3 goals, 1 assist in that span. Timo Meier leaving the San Jose Sharks, so they're going to be an uptake in the ice time of some of those other forwards there, and maybe Svechnikov's one of those because he's on a little bit of a heater right now. They're playing against the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens are allowing the 4th most goals per game in the NHL at the moment, so maybe he keeps the streak going.
All right, Paul.
I think we got to check Anna's family tree for Svechnikov references. There's been a lot of them this year. But anyway, I like the Detroit Red Wings top line, Dave Perron and Tyler Bertuzzi, both sub $4,000 price tags against Ottawa. They have a lot of redeeming to do after almost a no-show last night. And Mikhail Granlund for Nashville, playing alongside Kaprizov, only $3,800 against Pittsburgh. I think that's a very good value. And then finally, Jaden Schwartz, another former St. Louis Blue, featured in Seattle's lineup, second line forward and a second line power play, makes him worth a value play at sub 4,000 as well.
AJ, who's your top DFS value play tonight?
Well, Anna mentioned stacking the Sabres here, and with Alex Took on injured reserve, youngster Jack Quinn is getting a look on that top line with Tage Thompson, and Jeff Skinner comes in at a paltry 3,200 tonight, 6 points in his last 6 games. And again, they're at home against those woeful Blue Jackets. This offense should be raring and ready to go, and I think Quinn plays a huge role in that tonight.
All right, last one before you 3 take off. Anna, who's a lock to score a goal tonight? Who's going to put that biscuit in the basket?
I think I got to stick with Buffalo at the moment, so I'm going Tage Thompson. I think they have an easy matchup ahead of them. I think he keeps going. We don't talk about him enough anymore, guys. I know he's still tearing it up right now in the league, but I feel like the Tage Thompson talk has gone down a little bit, and he's just going to keep scoring and make himself back in the headlines.
All right, Paul.
I like Brady Tkachuk. Did you see the clip of him challenging the entire Red Wings bench last night? There were no takers, and I think he's going to run wild again against them tonight.
AJ, bring us home, babe.
It's time for the Penguins to show up or shut up here. And so I think Evgeny Malkin continues his hot tear as he tries to force this team into the playoffs alongside Sidney Crosby. So I expect him to get one tonight.
All right, you 3. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Mean it. We got to take our final break of the show. When we come back, Jason Sobel, who's already popped on a few times, will join Jeff Ulrich. We'll break down some best bets for the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
DraftKings, y'all got the most ways to bet on NBA players. I'm hyped. Hitting props, that's my dog. Stack up buckets, blocks, and boards on my boy? Or superstar going one-on-one against another superstar? Oh, it's on. And all these bets are on my man's dedicated page? Now you spoiling me, DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and bet $5 to win $150 in bonus bets on your team to win. Action so good, why bet anywhere else? That's my move. He used my move.
This season, DraftKings Sportsbook is your place to bet on the greatest sport on ice. There's so many ways to get closer to the game. And with this latest offer, you can win big. Now that is deserving of some victory stick taps.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up with the promo code, and take advantage of this great offer.
And get in on the action with an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
You know, betting without a game plan is a little like skating a giant ramp without helmet and pads. I wouldn't risk it. And I wouldn't bet without a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook provides you with tools to set a realistic budget and time limits, so you're ready to bet responsibly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps to learn more about how you can practice safe bets.
With DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports, you can play for millions with a lineup full of big NBA stars. Maybe you throw in a three-point specialist that's been around the league, seen a thing or two. You know, if you want. Download DraftKings and play for your share of millions. Action's so good, why play NBA anywhere else?
Chris Kirk, the last man standing at the Honda Classic, successfully fending off a feisty Eric Cole in a playoff for his 5th career PGA Tour victory, his first win in more than 8 years. The final pairing, I mean, this was a hell of a Sunday here, Jeff Ulrich, going back and forth, featherweight bout unfolding on the grounds of PGA National. 2 players in their mid-30s here entering the ring. Only one remained when play was completed. Action Network's Jason Sobel joining DK contributor Jeff Ulrich here now, and Sobel on the grounds of this week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. But before you say anything, Jason, we got to let Jeff take his victory lap because he was all over Chris Kirk.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, it was a great week for Chris Kirk. I mean, what a great comeback win. Obviously dealt with a lot of issues, over the last few years, open about his alcoholism and becoming sober. But I mean, this is a player who had shown really good form early in the West Coast. And one of the things that I always look for when we switch over is were guys popping, were guys making top 10s, and are they suddenly going to maybe be helped by the switch over to Florida? Chris Kirk, top 10 at Honda last year, top 10 at the API. He likes playing here. It's a more technical track. It's a very, very savvy, just got a very, very clean, nice to watch game. And I feel like a win like that for a guy like Kirk could potentially bump him to better things. Eric Cole really pushed him down the stretch. Chris Kirk lost the lead, came back. So I thought it was a really nice number you were getting on him in that field at 30-1 or bigger. And it's nice to have one pay off. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, dude, it was tough for me, like sitting there on the couch, like watching, because I kind of wanted both guys to win. Like I liked both of their stories.
It was probably the best Sunday we've had in terms of just like, well, I mean, one of the best for sure in terms of just competitiveness. Eric Cole refusing to go away, sinking long putts, and just being scrappy. And then, like I said, Chris Kirk coming back after he gave up the lead. You don't see that often when a guy gives up the lead with like 3 holes to go and bounces back. So, man, PGA National has to stay on the schedule. What a great event.
Totally agree with you, man. Like at this point, Kirk is just a really hard guy to ignore. Has a great track record there at Bay Hill, where again, Jason Sobel is joining us live from right now. And Jay, I want to pull up one of your tweets here because you mentioned the weather potentially being a problem this week, specifically the wind. How much should bettors factor in all of this weather and the wind before placing a wager?
So first of all, Emerson, it's nice to not have snow here. I know you have snow there. It doesn't look like it's going to come down for a while here. It is windy though. It's only Tuesday. It's windy already. Feels like the wind comes in every single year during this week. And I live 10 minutes away from this golf course. It hasn't been windy here in 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe a little one club wind. It is looking at something like 30-mile-an-hour steady winds, or 26, I think is what I had in that tweet for the forecast. Gusting up to 43 miles an hour on Friday. So Friday looks to be the worst of it. Saturday still windy. Sunday looks like it calms down. We actually have a decent final round, unlike last year where it was blowing all over the place. It's going to be hot, though, and windy. And what that means is the greens are going to bake out. The one good news, I think, for bettors, and again, it's only Tuesday. All of this can change. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like it starts blowing first thing in the morning. It blows throughout the entire late morning, early afternoon, keeps blowing later in the afternoon. I don't see necessarily an edge for either the early or the late wave. So I think you can confidently play whoever you like based on how they play in the wind, but I don't think it's necessarily based on tee times. Again, at least not yet. We have 3 days to go.
All right, Jeff, you listened to everything Jason just said. Anyone out there come to mind who could potentially have an edge here?
So a couple things. First of all, that is some of the best information you're ever going to get, whether on this show or just regardless of golfing, having a guy there on the grounds, knows the weather. And second of all, I think what that's telling me is I think that there's long shots in play this week. You can't have 30 to 40 mile per hour winds and not have chaos. So especially on a course like Bay Hill, where there's water on 9 holes, there's drives you got to carry. So I'm looking at guys, a couple long shots just come to mind right off the bat. Christian Bezuidenhout, fantastic short game. He's won on Valderrama, one of the hardest golf courses in the world. He's probably hovering around 100 to 150 to 1 in the odds there, getting it up. Our producer's doing a great job of that. He's played well in Florida. He's played well at API. Another guy with a greasy short game, Danny Willett. These are players who are going to have shots because of the wind. Everyone's going to be missing greens. Willett's probably trending around 200 to 1 or something on DraftKings. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. If you're creating a betting card, you need to create some room for some of these high variance plays. I think Bezuidenhout and Willett are good options.
All right, Jay, John Rahm, the favorite this week because we all know how damn good at golf he's been lately, winning 3 of his last 6 starts, plus 650 on the DK Sportsbook here. But you've also got guys like Rory and Scotty right behind him. Which one of them would you bet before Rahm?
Either of them before Rahm, quite honestly. I understand the number on Rahm. It's a worthy number for Rahm, but I'm not betting Rahm. Of his 10 career PGA Tour wins, exactly 0 have come in the state of Florida. I do believe that he's obviously the ball striking tee to green has been fantastic so far. But if there's a little kryptonite for Superman, it might be Bermuda Greens, the Bermuda Greens of Florida that we'll see not only here at Bay Hill this week, but at the TPC Sawgrass for the Players Championship a week from now. I'm very interested to see how Rahm does on those putting surfaces because it hasn't been a great track record for him in the state of Florida in the past. I look at both Rory, a horrific record at the API, including a win here.
Oh.
And we straight up lost him. Well, good for him. It's really nice weather down there. I hope he goes and enjoys it and doesn't have to work very much. Hey, Ulrich. So Scheffler, defending champ here, should be able to handle any nasty win this week. We just heard before Jason decided to hang up. No, he's back. That Rory, this is a venue where he's had success. Which guy would you prefer over Rahm?
Yeah, I would prefer Scheffler. The one, I mean, Rory's had a lot of success here. The one thing I always worry about Rory is I like taking him on easier tracks. I don't love it when the conditions are super tough. It's not that he can't play well. It just feels like most of his wins come in conditions where the scoring gets like 15 under or better, and he can just get in that groove. So I really prefer Scheffler, the top 3. He basically won in similar conditions last season, at 5 under par. And he's trending with the exact same record. So why fight the trend there? Scheffler's the guy you got to be looking at for the top 3. Although I think that, again, with so much chaos on tap, avoiding all 3 isn't a bad idea either.
Jay, how do you feel about Max Homa's number now up to plus 2,000? 2 outright wins in 7 events played. He has a runner-up against John Rahm in his most recent event at the Genesis. Does he deserve to be ahead of guys, let's see, like Justin Thomas, who are plus 2,500?
Does he deserve it? Yeah, he probably deserves it based on his win equity and his ability to close over the last couple of years. But remember, Max Homa does not yet have a career top 10 in a major championship. This is going to play like a major championship this week. And so I'm looking at guys who play their best golf when conditions are tough. That has not traditionally been Max Homa. Doesn't mean he can't play well, but he's a guy I like to favor on the West Coast. Let's wait till the U.S. Open at LACC in a few months. Some other guys at that number or close to it, just around the same. I think Will Zalatoris is maybe just a little bit shorter. Matt Fitzpatrick, just a little bit longer. They were 1-2, of course, on the U.S. Open leaderboard last year. They know how to play good golf in tough conditions. Each one has some injury issues, but I'm not too worried about them. Maybe lowered expectations equals better results for each of those guys.
All right, Jeff, what do you think here? Homa around plus 2,000. I mean, he was in the top 10 here a couple of years ago, but as Jason mentioned, like with this being an elevated event, it feels like a major. It feels different than it did 2 years ago.
Homa deserves the number. I mean, he's done everything but like have one high finish in a major at this point. But the thing is, it's very much the John Rahm. Like we're in a different part here. It's much like playing the horses. There's some horses where they run better at muddy tracks. There are some golfers that they just play better on the West Coast. John Rahm and Max Homa are West Coast horses. That's where you want to play them. That's where they get their wins. We just saw it happen. And now we're in the state of Florida. I would much rather take Justin Thomas at plus 2,500 than Max Homa this week. Justin Thomas has wins at the Honda, at TPC Sawgrass. This is his bread and butter. He plays down here. Even a guy like Victor Hovland at plus 2,800, he's got multiple runner-up finishes, 3 runner-up finishes in the state of Florida. These guys just perform better. They're Florida horses. Max Homa is a West Coast guy. I think that I just don't really like the number on him this week, if I'm being dead honest. Does he deserve it? Yes, because he's an absolute closer, as Jason mentioned, but we're in a different part of the United States right now, and I think you got to switch to the Florida guys.
All right, we'll get you two out of here with this. Your pick to win the Arnold Palmer Invitational this week at Bay Hill. Jeff Ulrich, go ahead.
I'm going Victor Hovland, man. I mean, again, top 5 of this event last year. He's got 3 runner-up finishes in the state of Florida. Yeah, he's got to get a little bit better around the greens, but he's gained strokes around the greens at Bay Hill. Each of the last 2 starts here, struck it really well at Riviera, gaining strokes on approach. Give me Hovland. I like the number of plus 2,800 still, too.
What about you, Jay? I saw you tweeting how important strokes gained around the green is, too, at this place.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Will Zalatoris. He was my pick here a year ago. He wasn't putting well. He was mired in a 6-event streak where he lost strokes on the greens. Right now, I know the putting stroke doesn't look great. There's been some viral videos, but his putting stroke, he's actually gained strokes on the greens in 6 consecutive events. I know he's not 100% healthy, but again, lowered expectations. I'll also have Matt Fitzpatrick, a couple of the guys that Jeff mentioned, and the Zayden Hoot and Willett on the card, and Keegan Bradley and Tommy Fleetwood from that mid-tier. Just want a whole bunch of flushers this week. Guys who ball strike, maybe not team putter this week, but that's okay. 2 putts are fine when pars are good.
Yeah, Zalatoris has shown significant improvements there with the putter in recent months, as you mentioned. Thanks, Jay. It was great seeing you down there, man. Don't forget your sunscreen. You look very handsome and glowing there in the sun. Jeff, you still look very pale. But everybody, you're very welcome. Everybody, thanks for watching.
We're in the hockey segment.
Yeah, it's all good, dude. I really wanted to get your pick for best winger on the board tonight, but it's all good. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Great. All right. Well, we'll see everyone. I'm actually hosting the slate tonight, 5:00 back here on the DK social channel. So I'll see you then.